Americans love fast food. There's a McDonald's in even the smallest U.S. towns, and few people have to drive more than a mile or two to reach a Starbucks or Dunkin Donuts. But for a multitude of reasons, chains like these don't always go over as well in other countries. Sometimes the problem is obvious, but other times, it's totally unexpected. Today, we're going to take a look at some popular American restaurant chains that failed overseas. Before we get started, be sure to subscribe to the Weird History Food channel. And after that, please leave a comment and let us know what other international restaurant stories you'd like to hear about. Okay, time to pull forward to the second window for some weird history. There was a time not too long ago that Domino's Pizza was so sure Italians were going to like their food, they made plans to open 880 locations throughout Italy and presumably told the Noid to grow a mustache. Okay, so it wasn't entirely about the food. Domino's believed that the people of Italy would embrace its business model because they didn't have a lot of home delivery options, which actually doesn't sound that crazy. Although if your only delivery option is Domino's, you still don't really have any. And it was with that optimism that in 2015, Domino's opened its first location in Milan. To keep things palatable to the locals, the company even sourced all its ingredients from Italian vendors. But this was still Domino's, so they added an American flair by including menu items like cheeseburger pizza, Hawaiian pizza, and barbecue chicken pizza. You know, things most Italians probably wouldn't eat at gunpoint. That's like taking Michael Corleone to Fazoli's. And Godfather 2 Michael, not Godfather 1 Michael.
You broke my heart.
Domino's strategy did not pay off. Once the COVID-19 pandemic hit and other restaurants began offering delivery options, Domino's biggest selling point was mood. Once the whole delivery issue wasn't a factor, it quickly became apparent that Italians weren't really interested in what Domino's had to offer.
È come dire, io vado in Inghilterra e gli faccio da mangiare il fish and chips.
Quelli che hanno inventato la pizza gliela portano qui. Non ci capiscono niente americani.
Meglio la pizza italiana, sicuramente.
Sales dropped, and by the summer of 2022, the last Domino's location in Italy closed for good. Back in the 80s, Wendys set out to conquer Europe. Figuratively. As far as we know, Wendys still does not have a standing army. They opened several locations in the Netherlands, Belgium, and Luxembourg, only to close them all just a few years later. No harm done, right? Wrong. When the fast food chain pulled out of Europe, a businessman named Raymond Warrens opened a fish and chip shop in the Netherlands called, you guessed it, Wendys. Warrens registered Wendys for trademark in 1995, claiming that he named the restaurant after his daughter and wasn't trying to take advantage of the existing chain's name recognition. Okay, he wasn't only trying to do that. Whatever the reason, the American Wendys has been unable to open a location in the EU ever since. Today, America's Wendys continues to fight Warren's Wendys, but so far, the Netherlands government has firmly backed Warren's trademarks. However, when England officially left the EU during Brexit, American Wendys took advantage by opening up a location outside of London.
It's really exciting to finally open the doors of our first restaurant here in Reading.
Looks like a good time to dust off that army, pigtails. While the chain now intends to expand throughout England, the EU still remains off limits.
And there's no difference between me and you. It's food, folks, and fun. Food, folks, and fun.
When McDonald's first opened in Russia in 1990, it was a huge political deal. So huge you might call it a McDealio. It was the first time Russians would be able to experience Western consumerism in the form of mass-produced burgers, fries, and, clowning in the Soviet Union. And they all lived happily ever after. Okay, not exactly. In March of 2022, McDonald's shut down all of its company-owned locations in Russia in response to the country's decision to invade Ukraine. 2 months later, the company made the decision irreversible by selling all 850 restaurants to Siberian franchise owner Alexander Gover. Gover reopened the chain under a new name, Vykusno i Tochka, and pledged to retain the 62,000 employees previously hired by McDonald's, which sounds like a classy move on his part. Patrons might not even notice the difference. The logo still has a stylized M, customers still order on touchscreens, and they have an off-brand clown mascot who wears a fur hat and smokes cigarettes. Okay, we made that last part up, but they should seriously look into it. The original Taco Bell opened in California in the 1960s and quickly became a sensation. In America, at least. While patrons in the US were dazzled by the fast food menu of Americanized Mexican cuisine, actual Mexicans were less than impressed. Taco Bell first tried to expand south of the border by opening a taco stand in Mexico City in 1992. Starting small turned out to be a good idea because the Mexican clientele was immediately confused. And why wouldn't they be? The names of the items on the menu didn't translate to the authentic versions of the dishes they were accustomed to. Imagine ordering chicken salad and getting a bucket of fried chicken and lettuce. It was kind of like that. The stand had to change the tacos on the menu to tacostadas because the crunchy shells more resembled traditional tostadas than the tacos Mexican locals knew and loved. Just 2 years later, Taco Bell, or should we say Tacostadas Bell, closed up and left the country. But time heals all wounds, and Taco Bell tried again in 2007. This time, they decided to lean into their status as an American fast food joint by offering things like French fries and soft-serve ice cream, things typically enjoyed by children that are also staples of American cuisine. If you're thinking something like, there's no way that will work, then maybe you should be running Taco Bell. Because the locals still couldn't get past the tacostadas, or any of the other strange versions of their favorite dishes.
Mexican pizza. It's like pizza, but it's different.
The chain closed all its stores in Mexico in 2010. In 2001, Starbucks opened 6 stores in Tel Aviv, a city well known for being Israel's foodie destination. That probably sounded like a great idea at the time, but there was a downside. For Starbucks, not for Israel. Being close to Italy, the Israeli population knew good coffee, and local franchises like Aroma and Our Cafe often connected with Italian roasters to bring the world's finest coffee beans to their shops. Additionally, Starbucks' fast-paced environment didn't appeal to the local Israeli population, who preferred to sit, sip, and enjoy their beverages while chatting with their friends. Starbucks management refused to adapt to the country's coffee culture, which is definitely a thing you do when you want your business to succeed, because it would mean serving fewer customers and thus earning less profit. Ultimately, all Tel Aviv Starbucks locations closed by 2003. ChickfilA itself pays for each franchise's opening and startup costs, which is why they usually only open locations where business strategists are pretty damn sure it will succeed. Mr. Filet doesn't open his checkbook unless there's a guaranteed return on the investment. Or wait, would it be his peckbook? The owner of Chick-fil-A is an actual chicken in this scenario. The company's reluctance to open potentially risky new locations really says something about how well they think they'd fare overseas, because as of August 2021, only 2 international locations existed, one in North York, Ontario, and one in Toronto. Those are both in Canada, and Canada is barely a foreign country. But that doesn't mean Chick-fil-A owners haven't tried to expand the restaurant's global presence. For example, in 1997, the Atlanta Business Chronicle reported that Chick-fil-A planned to open a location in South Africa. At the time, a corporate vice president noted that there was definitely some risk in the potential location, but that their product was also in high demand. However, that demand was, apparently, not high enough. By 2001, investors abandoned the project, and Chick-fil-A founder Truett Cathy told reporters that, geographically, it was just too hard for the company to get merchandise to its employees. After all, it's a long way to South Africa from College Park, Georgia. Dunkin Donuts is primarily known for 2 things: sugary sweet breakfast treats and coffee, and candid photos of Ben Affleck. Okay, 3 things.
Should I be in it, or do you want just a self-portrait?
But while Americans appreciate having heavy dessert-style pastries first thing in the morning, Indian cultures prefer to have something savory for their first meal of the day. It's not that the people don't love sweets, but they have their own versions of snacks that have been around for centuries. They also prefer chai over coffee, making it incredibly difficult for Dunkin Donuts to establish roots in the country. When the Massachusetts-based donut shop chain first appeared in India in 2012, things went south fast. Managers quickly realized that Dunkin Donuts would have to alter its menu to serve Indian clientele if it hoped to survive. So the shops put chai on their menus, but still couldn't successfully wedge their way into the savory breakfast culture or leverage popularity over the locally owned sweet snack shops. The franchise's premium prices didn't help either. Many families simply couldn't afford to become regular shop patrons, or didn't care to spend that much on coffee and donuts. That should be a change in the cup holder situation, not something that actually requires you to bring a wallet. In 2018, the donut chain closed more than half of its locations in India. McDonald's has restaurants in 120 countries, but Iceland isn't one of them. The burger chain tried to extend its golden arched kingdom into the Nordic region in 1983, and they made quite a splash. Customers literally stood in line for days to get their hands on the legendary quarter pounders and fries, but the excitement didn't last. The novelty of eating burgers under the watchful eye of America's richest clown quickly wore off. When the Great Recession of 2008 reached Iceland, the country's economic crisis was especially bad. Icelandic currency dropped dramatically, and import costs for McDonald's ingredients skyrocketed. As a result, local Icelandic businesses faced bankruptcy as McDonald's drove up prices to cover the increasing import costs. But despite their efforts to squeeze McBlood from a McStone, the massive burger chain just couldn't make a buck. By 2009, they had shut down all operations in Iceland. In 2014, McDonald's and Burger King both operated outlets in Vietnam. Patrons were initially excited to taste the food made famous by American movies, but that goodwill tapered off once they actually got a look at the stuff. Turns out, the Vietnamese people weren't fans of the calorie-dense, deep-fried menu items that didn't taste anything like the street food they were accustomed to. Because while McDonald's is delicious, it's not the kind of cuisine you can just jump right into. You have to spend years building up immunity with regular injections of Quarter Pounders and Egg McMuffins. Exacerbating the problem was that Vietnam's streets are filled with food vendors offering healthier fast food options that meet local flavor standards at a much lower price than the American chains. Turns out, healthier, cheaper, and better tasting is a tough combo to beat, unless you're a salad. Who wants to eat that? But not every American fast food franchise has met the same fate. KFC has been open in Vietnam for 20 years and remains a popular choice. Fast food patrons around the world recognize the Colonel's House of Chicken and can visit the chain restaurant in 145 countries, spanning 6 continents. Take that, Antarctica! However, not a single one of these locations is in Norway. Why? Because chickens are crazy expensive there. You see, Norway isn't part of the EU, and its economic conditions are vastly different from other countries. Unfortunately for KFC lovers, it's far too expensive for anyone in Norway to import the number of chickens needed to run a KFC and still turn a profit. Come on, how many chickens does it take to run the register and the line? It can't be that many. You might remember the Baskin Robbins slogan claiming they have 31 different flavors of ice cream.
Baskin Robbins presents 31 ice cream flavors at their Baskin Robbins 31 ice cream stores.
And while that sounds like a lot, the truth is Baskin Robbins now has over 1,400 flavors. That's enough to make sundaes for every member of the polyphonic spree. That's great for ice cream lovers, but a bit much for first-time customers, which was the case when the chain tried to open up locations in South Africa. The wide selection intimidated people, as much as anyone can be bullied by ice cream. The price didn't help either. Baskin Robbins limited their product to a specific upper-middle-class market, which grew increasingly health-conscious over the years. Meanwhile, other potential patrons tended to visit once, see the prices, and never come back. They also had a questionable geographical strategy. Instead of spreading shops throughout the nation, Baskin Robbins opted to open 5 franchises all at the same time. This saturated the market, which in turn caused fewer patrons to show up at any particular location. Ultimately, the demand for Baskin Robbins didn't match the cost of running a business that traded in products that melt if you didn't sell them fast enough. So what do you think? Which American fast food chain do you think should try going international? Let us know in the comments below, and while you're at it, check out some of these other Weird History food videos.